firm is Formichella Sritawat, and we are very much a boutique telecoms, media, technology, law practice with a large corporate law component and a dispute resolution practice as well. But the bulk of what we do is in the telecoms, media, and tech space, and that includes cybersecurity and data privacy. When I say TMT, I include those two actual areas as well.
Could you talk, just to go off script slightly, could you talk a little bit about why you include those as part of TMT and cybersecurity?
Well, data privacy data privacy law is, I would say, born out of the expansion and the pervasiveness of technology. We are more and more online, and those vulnerabilities, as we all know, have been exploited, which has initiated the need for data privacy law.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always been data privacy law in constitutions and in the medical industry, but that's when you had papers locked in a box. You had to keep them secure, but with technology, actually your personal data has become more vulnerable. So that it's just a natural outgrowth from being a technology law practice. I would say that it's uncommon in Thailand, anyways, to be a boutique firm, and most firms tend to be full service. We have decided that we are boutique. Now, we may merge in the future with a boutique tax practice, but for now, we are boutique, and this is what we solely focus on. So I think that's the main differentiation. Although there's some other firms that are larger that have good TMT practices, but none that I know of that are boutique as we are.
Really specialist, basically.
Well, they have specialists,
Right.
but they're a part of a larger organism.
Right.
Whereas our organization, virtually 80% of it is a TMT practice, the entire organization.
And you can devote 100% of your efforts onto that particular area, right?
Well, yes, and we don't have to call in lawyers from other departments to help. That we have to rely on lawyers that are in a different department. All of our lawyers are all of the lawyers are specialized.
Sure,
I'm just one of a team. That there are members of my team that have more knowledge about certain nuances of telecommunications law, media law, data privacy law than I do. I think, well, there's a high demand for tech media services in Thailand, and with that follows the technology, meaning enlarged tech platforms, data centers, etc. But I think that what probably in the near future, I think satellite-based services are going to expand because the market is now opening up. It used to be a government monopoly, essentially.
I see.
But now that market is opening up to foreign satellite owners to provide services directly in country. Until recently, it was when I say government monopoly, I don't mean they were government-owned satellites, but they were satellites that were they're owned and launched by private partners, but they have a license to operate them by the government, and the government only allowed basically one company. But now they're starting to say, well, okay, this foreign-owned satellite can directly communicate with ground stations,
Right, okay.
gateways, uplink, downlink stations based in Thailand. That's a good question. I think, bottom line is when a client asks a question, they don't know what they don't know. And fortunately, in many of those situations, we tell them, look, you don't have a problem. You don't need to have any concerns about the legalities of what you're doing. And they appreciate that. Whereas you could argue that, well, yeah, you probably should get an additional license of some sort, but exactly what you're doing right now, you're within the boundaries of the law, and you don't have anything to be concerned about. And with the cost of legal services and the cost of technology companies have a lot of costs. The human capital is very expensive. The machines are very expensive. The software is very expensive. And so, where they can save on costs and not have to worry about any legal issues, that's what I consider an add value.
Peace of mind, basically, right? Peace of mind.
Yeah. You're giving them advice where you don't have to go through a long process here. Here's a more practical and easier process to go through.
Yeah.
Get to know them, get to know what their concerns are, get to know their working style, get to know what kind of internal pressures they're under. A lot of these folks are middle to senior executives at fairly large corporations, and of course they have their own internal pressures. So try to understand what their internal pressures are and how we can help take some of that pressure off of them. So that they can deal with their superiors or their colleagues, to give them practical advice so that they can work internally and make them look successful. We deal with so many multinationals from so many different cultures and countries.
Right.
The first thing that I do and what we do is we listen. We don't ask them what's your internal process. That would be a bit, I think, inappropriate. But we may ask questions of how do you want this delivered?
Right.
How do you want the advice delivered? What is it exactly that you're trying to accomplish? And we're not suggesting we'll give you advice to whatever you want to hear, but what are you trying to accomplish? How would you like this delivered? You don't get to know somebody on a first round, especially in this day and age when you're communicating by email. Over the past 2 years of COVID, communications have largely been through email. And what's great about, opening up recently is we've actually gone to travel, to meet some of the clients, and their personalities were completely different from what reading their emails. Some of their emails come across as curt and
nice in person.
a bit sharp.
Yeah.
And you meet them in person, and they're just the nicest people. So. We try not to get too involved in commercial decisions, but we do give strategic advice in terms of how the customs and practices of the regulators. So, as a lot of these clients are multinationals, they may have a set way of thinking of how a regulator behaves, and sometimes we have to say, well, hold on a second. In this jurisdiction, a regulator is not going to be so concerned about that. And in fact, that question will never come up. Here's a question that will come up. So I go back to satellites, for example. For the regulators in Thailand, national security is a big issue, and so their frame of mind and their questioning is that's going to be in the background. That's going to be in their subconscious. Whereas in other jurisdictions, that may not be a frontline issue. It may be something else. And so clients that are based in North America or Europe may have concerns about frequency use, ownership of landing stations, etc., as a priority. I mean, those are issues in Thailand as well, but they need to be aware of that this is also an issue. National security is also an issue.